Hello and welcome to today's video, where I will show you how to use layouts to build a simple user interface in Android Studio the easy way. So what we'll actually build today, this is a beginner tutorial, so our app is quite simple and it has this user interface containing some buttons and a text view. The thing about these buttons is that they are not just thrown there on the screen, they are embedded inside a table layout, which is placed inside the constraint layout of the main activity. So I will show you how to have multiple layouts, one inside of the other, with different objects placed inside the layouts. And by the end of this tutorial, which should be short, we'll create something like this. The user interface that will look good both in the vertical orientation or portrait mode and in the landscape mode as well. So let's move to the Android Studio and see how it's done. Once the project is loaded, you can move to the activity main XML file, and this is where you build the user interface. And as you can see, right now we only have one object over here. There is a text view, hello world. We don't need it, so we can just delete this one. And let me just teach you a little bit about this workspace. Over here, where you have these two sheets, one on top of the other, you can select and you can choose to have either the design, the blueprint, or both. And I believe I'll just leave both for now. You can choose to see all the constraints. If you have objects which are constrained, keep in mind this is a constraint layout, not linear, not absolute, not relative, it's a constraint layout. And you can hit this button to clear the constraints. You can set the margin over here. For example, you can have a 16 dp, and you can use this option to have some guidelines to align things and to set, to group, so on. Okay, on the right side, you have the attributes. So if you click on an item, you will see the attributes over here. The list is quite long, so you can just use this search option over here to search whatever you would like. For example, text or color or whatever it is that you need. And on the left side over here, you can find your buttons, your text views, you can find widgets, layouts, and so on. In the lower left corner, you will see a tree structure of your objects, whatever you've placed on the screen. Okay, so let's start building the user interface. We go for layouts, and first thing we do, we drag this table layout, and we drop it, as you can see here, on the constraint layout. Right now we have a table over here. It occupies the entire space available, and it's missing some constraints. We just say click on each one of these pluses, and we set the constraints. Okay. Next thing we need to do, as you can see, we have 4 rows in the table, but because we have no objects inside, we can't see anything. So we can't see where the rows or the columns are. So what we'll do, we'll start and we'll drag and drop some items over there. We start by the text view. So we just drag and drop it in the first row. It will be alone over here. Let me just zoom in. Then you have some buttons. You do the same. But at this point, I have a text view and I have 9 buttons. However, this will not be enough. So we need to add one more row. If you minimize these rows, and then you go to layouts, you find here table row, and you can just drag one and you can drop it. However, if you drop it over here on top of the table, it will be placed on top of the other rows. And you might want to add something here in the lower part of the table, not on top. So we can just take this table row and we try to put it over here behind. However, if we do this, as you might anticipate, it will be placed inside it. As you can see, now this table row has 3 buttons and 1 more table row, which is again not good. So the way to do it, we just take this object again and we come over here on the left side and leave it now. At this moment, you can see it's added underneath the other rows, and we can continue adding the buttons. At this point, we have all the buttons that we need, and we have this text view. Let's start by selecting the constraint layout, and we'll go over here and we'll search for margins, layout margins, and we'll just give it a 16 dp. Okay, now we have the margins for the entire layout. Let's start with the text view. For the text view, what we need to do, we'll just change, let's say the ID is going to be text view display, because we will display the pin on this text view. The text inside, we will change to enter pin code. We search for size because we want to change the text size, and we have this attribute. We go for 24. It should be enough. But we still have this text in the left side, and what we want to do, let's go over here where it says layout. Make sure you have selected this text view, and for the width, you go for match parent. And one more thing to remember, this is a linear layout inside, so the table itself has a linear layout. So for the layout weight, just give it a 1, which means it will take the entire space available. Okay, now the last thing to do is to move the text in the middle. For this, you search for text, and you will have text alignment. You click on it, you say center. Now your text moved to the center. We can do a little customization, a bit more customization. We can say style. For the style, you can select from normal, and then you change it to bold and italic. Why not change the color as well? And for the color, let's make it like so. And let's give it a background as well. And for the background, we'll give it, let's say, a light green. This is too much, something like so. As you can see, I'm using this search box over here to search for different attributes, so I can modify them as I please. With the text box being completed, let's move to the buttons. And you can see some of the buttons are larger, some are smaller. So we can select 3 of them, so 1 row. And then we can just right-click, linear layout, and distribute weights evenly. Now they are distributed equally, and they occupy the entire space, and none is in the other. And we repeat for all the buttons. As some of you might observe, these buttons are very close to each other. They actually touch each other, so we don't like this. What we have to do, we have to select all of them, hold Control, and you just click on all of them. Then you go for search, and you search style. And there is this style for the button. You will select small, this app compact button small. And right now your buttons look way better. Let's change the text so each button says whatever its function will do. At this point, all the buttons have a text telling us what the function of the button is. However, we still have to style the buttons a bit. So I will select all of them again. And I will search for size attribute to increase the text size to 20. Should make them easier to read. Then selecting only the OK and delete buttons. I will search for style just to make the text italic. And I will give them a different color for the OK button. Let's say a green color would be proper. And for delete, we'll give it a red color. But this time, the user interface should be finished for this example. Let's try to see how it looks in the emulator. As you can see, the application has loaded in the emulator, and I will zoom in a bit. You see it looks exactly as we desired. You have the text view on top, you have the buttons, and we didn't implement any functionality for the buttons. However, we can do it easily in our next video, our next app. But for now, you know how to build a user interface using different layers. Turn the device, because we have all the constraints set. The user interface adapts and looks good. Actually, it looks even better in landscape. All right, until we meet in the next video, keep practicing, keep learning, and take care.